What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Matt Pete Marketing Podcast. I am super excited to have Kaitlyn Casso on. Kaitlyn Casso is a brand photographer and strategist, as well as the host of the Inspired by HERstory podcast. She's on a mission to help women feel 100% confident in themselves and their brands so they can attract their soul clients. Through her podcast, she hopes to inspire, motivate, encourage, and empower others to step out of their comfort zone and follow their dreams. Once she started getting outside of her comfort zone and into her heart, she started living her life to the fullest in hopes that she can help as many people as possible do the same. Kaitlyn, thank you so much for taking the time to be on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be a guest on somebody's podcast. It's so interesting being on like the other side.
Right? It is a different feeling when you're on somebody else's podcast. I've done it a couple of times now. I honestly, I kind of like it. It's fun to not have to worry about editing when you get done recording.
Yeah, right. Definitely. I could see that.
Yeah. So right before we get started, what's your marketing passion?
Sure. So I would say my passion is to really be able to showcase people in their brightest light possible through different marketing tactics. So whether that is brand photography, of course, really being able to showcase them in their best selves, feeling confident and comfortable, or even through brand strategy, which is really helping entrepreneurs become crystal clear on their brand vision, on their story, and be able to strategically market that also so they can attract their soul clients, is what I like to say.
Awesome. So for everybody who's listening, watching, where can they go right now while they're listening to see some of your photography, some of your brand stuff?
Yeah. So you can go to KaitlynCasso.com. So I always like to share with people, I'm like, as far as I know, I'm the only Kaitlyn Casso. So even if you just Google me, like everything about me will come up.
Nice. Awesome. So that's Kaitlyn Casso, Casso. For anybody out there wanting to Google her right now, go check out some of her brand photography. And we were just chatting about traveling and Disney and all kind of stuff like that right before the call. So I'm excited for this call. We had to jump on though. We spent too much time in the pre-interview. I feel like it was such good conversation.
I know. I could just keep chatting with you about so many things.
Right. So I'm super excited for today's episode. So before we get into marketing, I want to ask the pod deck question for everybody out there who watches and listens regularly. They know what these are. So draw a random card. Anybody wants these cards, 10% off if you use code TheMattPete when you check out. All right, Kaitlyn, which words or phrases do you most overuse?
Oh man. Oh, well, probably, oh man. Um, like maybe whatever reactions I have. So I feel like it's especially short phrases. Like I say, geez Louise all the time. I'll be like, oh, geez Louise. And I've especially noticed things I say when people around me start saying it. So like, I remember when I was even in college and I was babysitting and the little kids that I watched all of a sudden kept saying, geez Louise. And I was like, where'd you get that from? And I'm like, oh, it's because I say it all the time. So I always say, I feel like corny little sayings like that, like geez Louise. I'm one to also not really swear unless if I'm really mad. So I also kind of I don't know if I guess it's appropriate to say on here, but like I'll say like mother trucker or something like that. You know, like I always like kind of add like a different twist to certain things. Yeah, yep, exactly. So I would say those are probably my phrases is like probably like is also one. Who doesn't say that though? Oh man, geez Louise, things like that. Cool. Like I notice those things for when I text people also.
Yeah. So mine, I was thinking about this. Actually, I was going through the decks a few days ago and I was like, what's something that, and I feel like my most overused thing, and maybe people who listen to the show probably might know this better than I do, but when I text and like any kind of text communication, messaging, whatever, I use LOL and smile. They're like the regular smiley faces way too much because I don't want to like send the wrong vibe when I send somebody a message. I want them to understand like it's coming from a lighthearted place and I'm not mad or angry or whatever. So it's like,
yes,
end of every
exactly.
message is like LOL. And it's like, I hate it, but I don't know another way to convey that through text message, without
Yeah,
putting something like that in there.
exactly. It almost helps like create a tone in a sense.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. We need to find
Mhm.
another way to do that. I guess emojis, but like again, I just use the generic smiley face because I want people to know I'm happy.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, Kaitlyn, what is something you see people doing in their marketing that makes you cringe?
So I would say one of the first things that I always tell every one of my clients is that you are your brand. So especially I work with a lot of small businesses, entrepreneurs, And I always share with them that they are their brands. So that means that they need to also put themselves out there. So showcasing themselves, which also means it doesn't necessarily need to be just what you do for your business. So, for example, I work with like a lot of business coaches, yoga instructors, and people like that. And the first thing they think of to put out in their marketing, whether it's social media, Instagram posts and things like that, they always want to just show what it is that they do, which of course is super important. You should definitely show what it is that you do. But when you are a small business and an entrepreneur, you need to make deep connections with people, right? So you need to build these relationships, you need to build connections, resonate with other people. And the best way to do that, besides showing what it is that you do, is also just showing the other side of you, whether that's your personal life, whether that is, and I also like to preface with there's boundaries. You don't have to showcase everything in your life. Like I don't show everything in my life, but there's certain aspects that I bring in that I know my ideal clients will resonate with. So I'll make sure to share that as well. So, for example, I love yoga and meditation and things like that also. So I'll share that part of me, even if like I don't teach that, if I don't do that with my clients, but it's a part of me that I feel like can attract my ideal clients in general. So showcasing yourself, who you are, what you do within your business, but also what you do outside of your business as well. And a lot of the times people are afraid to, whether it's get in front of a camera to take photos or to record video or to really even just like be vulnerable and share different sides of them. They have a hard time, but really that is one of the best things you can do in order to attract your ideal clients, because now you're resonating with people and they're going to come and want to work with you, but also you're going to want to work with them. Like you want to be able to work with certain people as well. You don't want everyone to come to you. You want your ideal clients to come to you. So the more you put yourself out there, the more you're going to attract those people. And that's something that I see so many people not doing. Like I even like to tell people, think when you're going on Instagram and maybe you follow a page and you just see text post or product post and that's it. And then all of a sudden they put up a picture of themselves and you're like, oh, that's what they look like. Like all of a sudden you're just like, hey, like it kind of makes you pause for a minute and you're like, all of a sudden you feel like a little bit more connected to that person or that brand because now you see their face. And I feel like that makes such a difference.
That's so true. And a couple things on that one, like when you see their face, I actually heard a good while back now, business cards, if everybody has those, like people put their face on them because those cards are less likely to be thrown out because people see a face and they feel bad throwing away a card with somebody's picture on it.
That's so
So
true.
yeah, I heard that. So like when I do business cards now, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I still to this day, like a couple weekends ago, I had somebody ask for my business card. So like, I was like, do I have those still somewhere? Like I had to go find them in my bag. But then that, and have you heard of the JK5 Jenna Kutcher?
No, I haven't.
So Jenna Kutcher has a thing which she used to be a photographer and now she's like a big entrepreneur, that kind of stuff. And I actually heard about it through Russell Brunson. He talked about it in one of his books, but it's called the JK5 for Instagram. And basically it's choosing 5 things in your life to talk about on Instagram. And that way it helps you plan, what content to post. So like for me, it could be, posting about the podcast, posting about family, posting about Disney World, posting about traveling, that kind of stuff. Because like you said, it allows you to add your own personality in there. You don't feel like it's all about the podcast or whatever, but it kind of gives you a roadmap as to what to post as well. So you're like, is this worthy of my Instagram? It's like, well, is it podcast, family, Disney, travel? Like you can go through those things.
Yeah. I've heard the idea, but I didn't realize, like, I didn't know that she kind of came up with that also.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. But I totally agree because it helps people stay engaged too, right? It has a
Yes.
variety of content rather than, always selling, like always either selling or only educating, but it's like then you don't know any other sides of them or their brand. It helps you stay almost more like a well-rounded person on in
Yeah.
social media as well.
Well, and then I'll get some people in my feed who, they run a business and they want to talk marketing, or then I'll get somebody in there who loves traveling. And then they're like, they just happen to have a business or happen to have a friend that runs a business, like, oh, he does a podcast on marketing too. That's kind of cool. And they'll connect with me on that level. So it helps
Mm-hmm.
bring in people with different interests that,
Yeah.
yeah, shared interests that also need the content. So
Mm-hmm.
it helps, like you said, it
Exactly.
keeps you a well-rounded person, and people like to interact with people, not really necessarily brands, unless you're
Mm-hmm.
Wendy's on Twitter. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
all right, Kaitlyn, if you were to start marketing for a new business today and they gave you a $1,000 budget, how would you spend it to get some more clients?
Mm. I actually feel like $1,000 can go a long way. I almost feel like I would even start off with some free tactics before
Mm.
even like thinking about the $1,000. And what I would start doing for free, especially, is posting on social media. So, first of all, the most important things to do is to figure out what platforms are best for you and your brand. Something that I love to share with, especially like my strategy clients, is the fact that not every platform, not every single marketing tactic needs to be done, especially as a small business and entrepreneur when you're a single person in your business and you don't have extra help, but you can find the right things to do for your business. And so first it's figuring out what platforms to be on. And so say if we're talking to social media, then it's also, creating content that makes sense for your brand. Content is key. It attracts people, it really tells your story, it shares what you do, and it makes people again, help build relationships with them. So creating content on whether it's Instagram, social media, and educating through it also, that's something that I have found super helpful, at least with like my own Instagram and building relationships with people, is educating people on to, why brand photography is so important, what my packages even offer. Sometimes people are just like, I don't like, do I really need this? So it's educating people on any of the questions you tend to receive. So I think that's something that's really important when creating content also. And then when we're thinking in terms of like spending money, I would say website is key. Something that I fully believe in is that looking professional is really important. So, whether that is having a professional website, whether that's having professional photos or anything like that, if you show up professionally, then you're going to attract people who are looking for that type of service. So if you're showing up professional, you're sharing with people like, hey, I take this seriously and I'm going to give you quality work as well. So I would say if you were to have that budget, then definitely, getting a website, whether that's you doing it yourself or maybe, you can hire somebody to help you out with that as well, or even being able to have some headshots or something like that in order to actually put on the website too, to show up professionally. You don't want stock photos on your website. They'll have no idea who you are. They'll feel like you're not getting the best quality from them. And then also, it's just really important to, share different sides of your brand that are also looked at as professional rather than cell phone photos or something like that. You don't want that quality to make somebody change their mind and want to work with somebody else instead.
I love everything that you just said. And the one thing that's like, yes, like why don't people understand that for me is the headshots.
Mm.
Like for me, and I'm not just saying that because you're a brand photographer. Like I can't tell you how many times I've been like researching people and like their headshots are just, and it's not like they took them with their cell phone, they're bad photos. No, you can take a decent photo with your cell phone. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking like super small, pixelated, horrible lighting. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
guys, you're running a business and this is the kind of content you want people to recognize as you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
man, just it's not like you said, if you're not a photographer, if you got $1,000 in your budget, hire somebody to take some photos because they're going to look awesome. Or if you have a cell phone with portrait mode, go stand in some shallow shade, maybe look out
Mm-hmm.
of a window at your house and have somebody take that portrait mode photo for you. Because like
Exactly.
it goes a long way whenever you're trying to make an impact.
And you know where I especially notice the headshot thing that drives me a little bit more nuts
Where's that?
is doing when I do my podcast and I ask for people's headshot photos to put on the cover photo for the episode. You know how many times I've received a selfie like super close up where like it's just chin and head, and I'm like, where am I supposed to put the title? So that's where it especially gets to me is when I'm asking for that. And I'm like, this is going to be everywhere. And it's also showing, my work too.
I wasn't going to say anything about but like I've had the same thing happen with my podcast, this one and the one I had a few years ago. It's like, guys, this is what's representing your episode. Like your smiling
Mhm.
face is going to be what helps people decide if they want to listen or not. And that's the image you send me.
Yeah.
It's like they took it with their laptop camera and they're looking down at it and there's like the
Mhm.
ceiling behind them. It's like, I don't think you understand. Like it's such a simple thing that people can do to just like improve their marketing 1000%. If you're an online entrepreneur and you don't have a good headshot, like do that today. Like, hey, I
Mhm.
need to represent myself better online. Get your spouse, your significant other, your child, whoever, to get some better photos of you. And honestly, if you're older and you have a child, they'll probably be better at taking the photos than you are
Yeah.
anyways.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to ask. Hey, you can even find
Absolutely.
someone on the side of the street, just be like, hey, can
Oh
you take my
yeah.
photo quick?
I can't tell you how many times we've been stopped and it's like my wife and I are we're photographers too. And it's like we get to stop and people ask, hey, can you take our picture? And it's like they get back, it's like, oh man, these are really good. It's like, well, I do it for a living. So
Yeah, well, it's like speaking of that too. So every time I go hiking, me and my friends love hiking. And whenever we go hiking and, we're at the viewpoint and people are all taking pictures. And whenever somebody says to one of my friends, like, hey, can you take our picture? They're like, sure, grab their phone and they give it to me. They're like, she's the professional. And I'm like, it's just a cell phone. But like, like,
yeah.
okay, but sure, like I get it. I'll still like make sure it's good composition and everything too. So
Yeah, for me, it's always stressful. It's like, ooh, I got to make this good now. And it's like you said, it's just a
yeah.
cell phone photo. They just want to post it to Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But, you want to make it look good.
Yeah, I know. There's that added pressure. You're like, I am the professional. Oh, crap.
Right. All right, Kaitlyn, tell us a story of your biggest marketing mistake.
Mm. So let's see. I would say, so something I'm still like trying to figure out, or I guess honestly, this is honest. I just haven't put enough time into researching, and I think that is key, and that leads to a lot of mistakes is researching things first, but is really figuring out Facebook ads and getting good at them, actually making them worth like the money that I put into it. So I feel like that is something I would say it's almost not a mistake, but it's just something that I know myself need to learn more and get better at so that it actually ends up being worth it. But then also, I would almost say this is kind of a marketing mistake is the fact that I love courses. Like I'm all about buying courses. I've created a course myself actually. And I love them, but so many times I'll buy them and then just not take them or let them sit there, or I'll start and then not finish. And I'm like, this is such a good, way for me to continue learning and growing. And yet I'm just letting it kind of sit there. So I would say that's almost like a mistake in a sense where I'm just like, all right, Kaitlyn, you got to like stop buying all these courses until you start actually taking them more.
Yeah. And, figuring out Facebook ads, I have a course too on video production, people making their own videos for their businesses, just to
Ah,
get them
yeah.
started with good video content.
Hmm.
What's your course about?
So mine is how to create a podcast, actually.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
Where can we find that?
So you can actually find it on my website. So KaitlynCasso.com. There's a title like in the menu called courses. So if you just click that, it will come up. And it's called How to Create a Podcast course. So super simple. I figure if people are searching that, then hopefully they'll find it. So it talks all about even like recording the podcast, how to record, equipment to use, software to use, editing the podcast. I take you behind the scenes, literally, of recording of how I edit and record and everything. And then also distributing the podcast as well. So, how to get on multiple
Mm.
platforms. And then I also have, even before all of that, talks to creating the topic of your podcast. Sometimes people have a hard time even they're like, I know I want to do a podcast, but what should it be about? Especially for business owners and having it relate to your brand as well. So creating the podcast topic, the episode and titles and everything of your podcast as well. And then I have two bonuses, one being how to market your podcast, because that's a big key, right? Like you're like, oh, I want to create this podcast and do it, but now how do I get it out there for everybody? So how to market the podcast, and then also how to find guests too, because if you want to interview people, sometimes it's a hard, you might not be able to figure out who to have on your podcast, what makes sense, or where to even find them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you have video on your podcast at all?
I do.
Oh, you do. So you record the video and do that too?
Yeah. So it's mostly, so I recorded like an intro video of myself talking, but more so the rest of it is my computer screen being recorded of showing like how to do things and everything.
Do you have like with your podcast episodes, so your episodes, it's basically how to stuff?
So for like what my podcast is about, or the course?
The podcast.
So my podcast is actually all about getting out of your comfort zone. So it's all storytelling. So I interview other women about how they have gotten out of their comfort zones in order to follow their dreams and live their lives to the fullest. Awesome. So I share a lot of stories of like women entrepreneurs. I've also had some guys on there as well, and I've changed it to inspired by HERstory for those episodes. But how sharing their stories and their journeys of how they got to where they are today, all by stepping out of their comfort zones.
That's awesome. Do you record the video when you're talking to them, like kind of like we are right now?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Do you put that out too? Like on YouTube?
So
and stuff like that?
I've been saving them, hoping to start a YouTube channel, but now I'm already on episode 86 and it hasn't happened yet. Yeah.
That's a big backlog of episodes to edit.
Yeah, exactly. So I think also the more I do, the less I want to put it on YouTube. But maybe one day it will happen. But what I've especially been doing is saving the video and doing clips for IGTV. And so smart. Hoping, it will attract people once they start seeing a video playing and it sounds really interesting and cool, they'll continue watching and then want to actually listen to the episode.
Full episodes. Yeah, marketing. Absolutely. Yep. And that's why I decided I wanted to do video with mine too. Cause I haven't, again, I think your episode like 24 or 25, I haven't I'm putting out the episodes on YouTube as the full episodes, but I know I want to do the snippets because that's what's going to perform better, getting those key moments out there. And, that's what I'm working on too. But it's funny you mentioned you have like a course on podcasting. In my course, in my video creation course, I actually have one of my bonuses is how to edit a video podcast.
Oh, awesome.
So people I show them how like I create my overlays and everything using Canva and mix that with Premiere Pro and how I edit quickly and everything. So it's like a part of it too. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's good to know. I'm going to have to check it out.
Yeah, people can get your course and learn everything else about the podcast, and they get mine and create videos and learn how to edit the video part of their podcast. It's just like, yeah, it's perfect. Exactly. And Facebook ads, figuring out Facebook ads. If you want, I can send you over a video. He was like episode 2 or 3 on my podcast, Max Sadek, and he is a certified Facebook ads person. And he sat down with me and I literally let him take the reins for about 40 minutes. He just walked through everything that Facebook ads, what you need to be doing. He showed some of his clients' videos. One of his clients who spent like $25,000 with him to help them run ads. And they brought in like over $1 million. He showed us one of their ads that they recorded on their cell phone with a ring light.
Oh, wow.
And and they run it in the stories, in people's stories. So they see it to drive people to her group, which drives people to her course, and like all the different options to select for Facebook ads to get your money's worth, basically. So, I mean, if you want that, I can get that to you as well. Cause it's a pretty awesome video.
To check that out.
Yeah. It's really cool. All right, Kaitlyn, what's your favorite marketing tool?
So it's funny because you just mentioned it, Canva. I love Canva. So easy. I'm a photographer. I use Lightroom, especially that's like my tool. Yep. I'll use Photoshop for certain things, taking certain things out. But, I've tried like, what's it called? Illustrator. Like I've tried Illustrator in the past for creating graphics and things like that. Way too complicated. Yep. As soon as I started using Canva, I was like, yes, thank you. And I know, I feel like I don't even know a single person now who doesn't use it.
That's how it's feeling for me too.
Yeah, and like even for like the free version too is great. Like I still only have free. Maybe one day I'll upgrade it, but even just doing the free version, there's still so much that you can do on it. And like I create my podcast graphics on there. I
Yep.
create like Instagram graphics, marketing materials, ebooks, like everything I create on Canva. And I just feel like it's so easy when you have the app, you can even just, quickly just download it right to your phone if it's something that you need to do like that. Canva is definitely the best tool ever. And I actually found it years ago. So, backtrack, I actually used to work in marketing at a corporate job before I started my business full time. And I remember learning about it like 7 years ago or so, probably when there was hardly even anything on there compared to what there is now. So every time they're adding more and more to it, I'm just like, oh, I love you guys.
Same for me. Yep. That is awesome. Yeah. And them adding some simple features like the curved text tool they just added.
Mm-hmm.
I remember looking up a video on that like mid-year last year. I was like, how do you create curved text? That can't be super hard. You literally had to take it letter by letter and like
Oh,
place it if you wanted
yeah.
to create that. And I was like, and they just added that feature the other day. I was like, sweet. And then I have the pro version. It's totally worth
Mm-hmm.
it. It's like
Is it?
$120 a year, and you can have like your brand fonts. I have brand colors for clients that I work with. So when I have creating something for them, I just go select it. I have folders. So like I have a folder with just pictures of me. So whenever I'm creating
Mm-hmm.
stuff, I need a different graphic or something, I just have a folder of pictures. Every time I take a good photo of me, I put it in that folder so I have it to use later.
Yeah. Oh,
But
that's good to know. It's dangerous to know what the pro version is
oh,
like.
it's super cool. Yeah, I love it. And have you, I'm sure you have, the background remove feature on photos?
So, yeah, they don't have that for the free version.
That's the, if they
That's
had
like a
literally nothing else in the pro version but that tool, it's worth it.
mhm. Yeah, that's what I keep thinking about because I mean, again, I'm not a huge Photoshop person. Like I've done it before with removing backgrounds, but I'm sure on Canva it is way easier to
It
do.
literally, you press one button and in about 15 seconds, you're removed out of the back. I don't understand how it works,
Oh my
but
God.
like you're removed out of the background. You can put like your color behind you with like a pattern or whatever. Like that's how I created my iTunes cover artwork. And it
Mm.
literally took me like 5 minutes to do.
Oh
And
my God.
it's, yeah, that one tool alone is worth the pro feature because
Mm-hmm.
it is, especially when it comes to creating graphics for your podcast.
Yeah. And
You
especially getting photos from other people when I'm like trying to put the cover photo together also. It's like,
exactly. That's one thing that's been a saving grace for me when people send me like a super small photo. I was like, what
mm-hmm.
am I going to do this? Because like with my old podcast, I was interviewing photographers and videographers. They literally, it's fine. They had pictures of themselves. But
Right.
now it's like, I get a small photo. It's like, where am I going to, like, I can't blow it up because I blow it up and it's like even worse to fit the full graphic. So I'll like put it in the corner down in the graphic and like have an arrow pointing to them and like with so-and-so.
Oh,
And it like,
mm-hmm.
I keep telling myself like good design doesn't always equal good marketing. So like I want to make it eye catching if nothing else. But
Mm-hmm.
that background remover tool, if you can find a free trial or do a free trial just for that one effect, you'll get hooked.
Mm-hmm.
That
Oh
and
man, I bet
having all
it's
the, yeah,
definitely it's going to
it's
be the
so cool.
next thing that I need to like upgrade. You know how you have like all these softwares and things that
Yep.
you need for your business. I'm like, oh, that's going to be the next one.
And honestly, being able to go in there and create, because like I remember, because I operated on the free version for a long time, and being able to go on there and just literally, it doesn't matter if it has a pro icon or not, you just grab it and use it. So like I
Mm,
created a pattern that goes behind a lot of my graphics. People say it's like a rocket ship and like money and like people connecting, that kind of thing, just icons. And
mm-hmm.
I grabbed all of those from Canva, and they're all like pro
Yeah.
pro icons wherever you normally have to pay for them, but like just grab them and throw them in there. I don't even think about it anymore. It's like, man,
Yeah.
each one of these is like $1, and I threw like 30 of them in there just as the background elements. Like they're just, I lower the opacity, blur them a little bit, and it adds something to the background, and
Mm-hmm. And so
it's
those
super
are
cool.
included. Like you don't have to pay extra for
Yeah,
those.
all the stock photos are included.
You're
Everything.
a really good
It's
salesman for them.
I'm telling you, like I have videos in my course about Canva and why it's such a powerful tool. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's so undervalued. And like you said, 7 years ago was when I
Mm-hmm.
like first 7 years ago is when I first started using it too. It's come such a long way since then.
Yeah, definitely. Especially the fact that they even just have templates. Like that part itself
Yes.
just makes me really happy and excited. Like now they have the Instagram Reels template too.
Ooh.
So what I love about it is that being a photographer, what I can do is, because if you're creating an Instagram reel, you can't use photos. It has to be videos when you're on Instagram. But if you go on Canva, they have a template for reels and you can input your photos and it just has like a timer for how long that photo is up. So it now becomes a video. And
Yep.
I've created reels showcasing my work with the photos instead. It makes it so much easier.
That's awesome. You just hacked
Mm-hmm.
the system for photographers there,
Mm-hmm.
showing off your brand's photos. That's awesome. All right.
Exactly.
I
Because
could
I
I
think
could talk
that's
about
important.
I could talk about Canva for like 30 more minutes, but I'm gonna go ahead and move on
Mm-hmm.
because I think people understand if you don't have Canva, go ahead and get it. And
Yeah,
I have the
definitely.
desktop version too. So like I don't even have to go online to just click on the app.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kaylin, if you could go back to when you first started marketing and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say something that I still like try to remind myself is doing research before just going into it. I'm always like, no matter what it is in life, I always say, I'll figure it out. Like, even when starting my business, I was like, I'll figure it out. Like I'll figure out how to get clients and I'll figure out how to make everything work and make this successful. But sometimes I notice that I'm wasting a lot of time by just figuring it out versus actually researching and maybe even, purchasing a course instead where it's actually going to tell me all of these steps and what helped somebody else succeed in it. So, whether it's purchasing a course, doing research, looking up blogs, um, in general, even just asking for help. So I know, like, especially being an entrepreneur, it's so hard sometimes to ask for help because it's like, I built this business myself. I want to do it all myself. But that's not necessarily the case. When you're trying to do everything yourself, when you're trying to just always just figure it out, you end up kind of wasting so much time. And I know, especially when starting or something like that, like you might not have much of a budget to put into things, but if you gradually chip away at it, like maybe you invest in a smaller course for something, or maybe you invest in a coach that might be able to help you with something, or maybe you invest in a brand photographer for photos, like whatever it is that you feel like you need that extra help in, you might be a little afraid to spend that money on it, but it starts to really feel like it all works out in the end because you're saving time and you're also showing up more professional, and you don't have to just sit there and try to figure it all out on yourself. When you're also asking other people for help, you are learning so much more in such a shorter period of time. I've noticed too, like even just having conversations with some people, I'm like, wow, you just saved me hours of research.
Yep.
So I think like that's really important is, doing your own research, but also asking for help, having conversations with people, like whatever it is that you can do to also save time, I think is really important because there's so much on your plate and there's so much to do that that can really help you in the end.
I love that. And, having a course, if somebody else wants to start a podcast, yeah, they can go and figure out how to start a podcast and YouTube it and join the groups and ask questions and have 18,000 different answers, or they can take your course where you
Mhm.
literally just walk them through the steps of creating a podcast. And
Mhm.
there's no confusion, there's no fuss. It's literally just clean.
Mhm.
And
Exactly, and, like, showing up professional at the same time
yes,
versus like,
yeah,
"Oh, well, I could just record on, like, my cell phone or something like that," right? Like, of course, there's other way around things, but even just having, what I use for my equipment is base model. I'm not going crazy spending so much money on equipment or anything like that. The softwares I use are free. Like there are ways to do it and still show up professional. And you don't
yep,
have to, go ahead and spend all this money to do that. But having the right tools or education or help or something can really help you figure that out.
absolutely. And do you know who John Lee Dumas is?
No.
So he has a podcast called Entrepreneurs on Fire, and he has a podcasting course, um, basically how to create a podcast too. But like, it's never been really cheap because he did podcasts like 7 days a week at one point. So his
Oh my
following was like
God.
stupid big. Yeah, I did some work for them a few years ago, and just as like a thank you, they gave me access to their course for free
Mm.
for a lifetime. So like when I went to create this podcast, I logged into the course and was able to like have all my questions answered within like 10 minutes. Didn't have to
Yeah.
Google random things and get everybody's different opinions. It's like, all right, this works for him. It works for me. Same
Mhm.
way with people taking your
Exactly.
course. Like if it works for Kaitlyn, it works for me. you know?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's always good to have that like recommendation from somebody. I take
Yep.
recommendations for anything over like anything else, because if I know it worked for somebody else, or somebody even liked working with someone, it's even like when I get my hair done, it's like I'm going to go
Yeah.
to a hairstylist that I know somebody who had a great experience with them, versus just maybe finding anybody just walking down the street or something.
Yeah. And honestly, when you said asking for help, like selfishly, that's kind of why I created this podcast, and it's why I created the last one. Like I was getting
Mhm.
really into marketing. It's like, I want to talk to other marketers because there's a ton of information out there that I don't have. And I would
Mhm.
love to just have conversations with these people so I can speed up that learning process and then share that with everybody else,
Yeah.
along the way. And it's been so amazing so far, learning from
Mhm.
people like yourself and like the past 23 other guests that I've had on the show. It's been so cool.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I say that for my podcast as well, because it's all these inspirational stories and hearing people overcome different situations. And I always say that when I do the interviews, it's like I'm having my own coaching call for free, because I'm
Nice.
interviewing them. And there's so many times that I go on to the interview and maybe I'm feeling a little blah, or I'm like, okay, like, got to do the interview today. And then after the call, I'm like on this high and I'm just so excited. I'm motivated. I'm ready to get into things. And so I totally feel you on that. It's like the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. I'm all about people having podcasts for no other reason than personal growth. It's super
Mhm.
cool. All right, Kaitlyn, this has been an awesome episode. We've had some super cool stuff in there. So besides everybody definitely checking out your podcast, Inspired by Her Story, where can people go to follow you and see some more of your content?
Yeah, sure. So definitely my website, KaitlynCasso.com. That has everything on there. It has my brand photography, what my brand strategy is, my podcast, the podcast course, everything. But then also Instagram is a big one for me, especially with showcasing my work. So that is Kaitlyn Casso Creations. And then I also have an Instagram for the podcast as well. Inspired by Her Story is on there. And for the podcast, it's really just on any podcasting platform as well. So Inspired by Her Story. Her Story is one word. I like to mention that also because it's a play on history.
Yeah.
So I take you through a journey. It's her story.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. Everybody go check out all of Kaitlyn's stuff because it's super awesome and it looks really good too. So people can check that out there. Kaitlyn, thank you again so much for being on today's episode.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah. And for everybody else out there listening and watching along, I hope this was inspiring for you as it was for me. Get out there, keep working hard, keep pushing forward, and remember that marketing matters.